We have a shocking update to a story that has left many, including the district attorney who is prosecuting this case, horrified. A third person's now under arrest after an 11-year-old girl reportedly gave birth in Oklahoma inside their home. Listen to what the child's grandmother said to KJRH-TV before we knew she was a suspect.
We didn't know this was happening. None of us.
What police say she didn't tell them about what happened, allegedly, inside of the home. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. If the allegations in this story are true, it is so hard to comprehend the amount of people who failed a young girl, just 11 years old, who allegedly gave birth inside her home. I can't be more clear about how hard it is to talk about this story and what the two people on your screen are accused of doing. It is unthinkable. And these are their mugshots, Dustin and Cherie Walker. Cherie is the 11-year-old's mom and Dustin is her stepdad. Now I'll get into what law enforcement is accusing Michelle Justus of now. Reportedly, the 11-year-old's grandmother. We'll talk about her in just a moment, but this story first came to light back on August 16th, and it all allegedly took place inside this home in Muskogee, Oklahoma. It's about an hour's drive from Tulsa. According to KWTW, who spoke to the district attorney prosecuting this case, an 11-year-old girl gave birth to a full-term baby inside this home on that day. The district attorney said the Walkers first told doctors that they were shocked that the 11-year-old was even pregnant. They said they had no idea. But it seems like law enforcement believes that that was a lie. The DA said the 11-year-old girl was, quote, petite, and for her to be full term and for nobody to notice just does not add up. We found old Facebook pages for the couple. Dustin is 34 years old and Cherie is 33, and many of their pictures showed them holding young children. A neighbor to this couple told KJRH-TV that 6 children in total lived in that house along with dogs and cats. And that neighbor said that this couple didn't have running water in their home for the last 2 or maybe 3 years. On the day this story came to light, a reporter with KJRH-TV was in the neighborhood trying to gather information for a story, and she reported that there was a woman who appeared to be taking videos of her from across the street. She then approached that woman on her way out of the neighborhood, and this is what the woman told her.
We didn't know this was happening. None of us.
How do you think your granddaughter got pregnant?
She keeps telling us that it was the little 12-year-old.
Now that woman you just saw speaking there was Michelle Justus. Now this is her mugshot according to law enforcement, and what you just heard her say to that reporter, according to law enforcement, was a lie. Justus was arrested and charged with 6 counts of child neglect. It is believed a total of 6 children lived in this house, including that 11-year-old girl who gave birth. According to KJRH, Justus is the 11-year-old girl's grandmother, and she lived near the house where that child reportedly gave birth. KFOR-TV is reporting that Justus witnessed the birth, but she did not alert the authorities. Now, police were called when the 11-year-old and the newborn were brought to a hospital. Police say the child hadn't been to a doctor in more than a year, and she also wasn't enrolled in school, so it appears that she was kept out of sight. Now, originally, Dustin and Cherie Walker were charged with child neglect, but then a paternity test came back, and that showed Dustin Walker, the stepdad, is that newborn's biological father, according to law enforcement. Now, Dustin is now facing a charge of sexual abuse of a child under the age of 12, and in the wake of the result, Cherie was charged with enabling sexual abuse. It doesn't appear that Cherie has a criminal history, but we did find 2 previous cases that involved Dustin Walker. One from 2020. He was charged with firing a gun inside his home. That case appears to have ended in a fine, but records show the case was sent to collections. In 2023, he was charged with domestic assault and battery in the presence of a minor, and that case was dismissed. Both the Walkers are now being held on $100,000 bonds. The DA told KWTW that both parents could spend the rest of their lives in prison if they're convicted. It is unclear what Justus is being held on in terms of bond right now. As for that young girl, though, who allegedly gave birth inside a home that reportedly didn't have running water, the DA said she's traumatized. She said that to give birth inside that home with Again, no running water, without medical care. It is hard to imagine what she went through and what it would take to recover if she ever could recover, not just physically, but mentally. The girl had not seen a doctor, again, in more than a year, and she hadn't been in school for more than a year either. And those are places where either a teacher or a doctor, a medical professional, a guardian could have stepped in and helped this girl, but she was reportedly held out of sight. Do you ever notice how some habits just sneak into your day without you even realizing it? For a lot of people, that means reaching for something on autopilot because you're stressed or run down, even though you know it's not good for you. That's why I want to tell you about our sponsor, Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that's great for combating oral fixation and fidgeting. It delivers great taste as your usual pick-me-up without any harmful chemicals. Instead of inhaling vapor, you simply breathe in natural, non-toxic flavors that satisfy the craving without the downside. Fume isn't about quitting, it's about replacing. It's a flavored air device that gives you that same hand-to-mouth habit, but without the downsides. There's no vapor, no nicotine, just natural, non-toxic flavors. Now, take a look at the design. It's a sleek wooden piece. It feels great in your hand, and the magnetic fidget features, they are satisfying and they're perfect for when you're stressed or you need something to help keep you focused. Plus, it's portable. You can take it anywhere. One flavor a lot of people say is the go-to is crisp mint. It is super refreshing and it is perfect for keeping you sharp throughout the day. But there are tons of flavors to choose from, so you can find your favorite. Over 500,000 people have already made the switch to Fume as part of their habit change journey. So if you're ready to try for yourself, now is the time. And for a limited time, if you order the Journey Pack using my code, you'll get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. So check the link, tryfume.com/lawandcrime, or scan the QR code on your screen to get yours today. Joining us now is retired homicide detective Dave Walker from Tulsa. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know this is a very disturbing story from your part of the country. First off, just the town of Muskogee, where all of this is taking place. I know it's a little more than an hour's drive, it seems, from Tulsa. If you've ever been there, what can you tell us about that part of Oklahoma?
Well, I've been there. We've worked cases with the Muskogee Sheriff's Office, with the Muskogee PD, and I played. You know, my teams in baseball have played baseball there. It's a good community. I like it. I feel safe there. It's kind of like a small town feel, yet it's right off of a major interstate. So the turnpike runs right through Muskogee. But I have nothing but good things to say about Muskogee.
Yeah, just this story out of this community, which, sadly, these type of cases can happen anywhere. But I mean, you read the headline and you do a double take because it's so hard to comprehend. But just in your experience and, as a member of law enforcement, you come across some really disturbing cases. I mean, how common is it to see something like this happen?
Unfortunately, it's not very common for us in law enforcement to come across this type of case, but when you come across it, then you realize it's happening more than it gets reported. And so that's what's disturbing to me. It's not so much that, there's incest in families anywhere, but we know that probably happens. In this case, brings a spotlight to it, but all the other cases that it doesn't have, we don't know about, don't get reported, and don't end up with a pregnant child, but we do end up with a child that grows to an adult with a lot of trauma. It's sickening actually for us in law enforcement to even think that happens. So yes, it's not a good deal.
Yeah, and it's just, part of this as well for me is you have this child. There was 5 other children apparently living in the home, but then you have this mom who's facing charges, the stepdad who's the biological father of this newborn, and then now another family figure, reportedly the grandmother, who has been arrested. All 3 seem to have told law enforcement lies from the very beginning, saying that they had no idea how any of this could happen, and the district attorney just seems to have said that just doesn't add up. When you're interviewing suspects in a case, what are some of the things you're looking for as you build your case, but also knowing whether or not the people like in this story are actually telling the truth?
Well, you look for I just had this conversation with somebody before. I mean, obviously, you have to do a little investigation to know when they're lying. But in this, it doesn't seem like you really need any experience. You just know it doesn't add up. Whatever they're saying just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And, if you're saying this 11-year-old child is impregnated by a friend because they're curious or however, that does not make sense to me. And I would come across the table with somebody like that, not come across physically, but say, does that make sense to you? And try to get them to start reasoning that anything they're saying is not making any sense. It's not going to add up. And eventually the truth is going to come out. And unfortunately, I think the truth will come out in court for these folks, and rightfully so. How many other people know about this? It is disturbing that the family members all knew this was going on, and it was affecting not even the 11-year-old, but all the other kids that are around. They know what's happening.
Right, and it's just this grandmother as well. I just think of, you have three people of the same family who all decided to cover up the same crime, and it's just, to have the three people come together. Of course, allegedly at this point, paternity test comes back, confirms the stepfather is the biological father of this newborn. When you're building a case and you have the science on your side, what more do you need to have and to be able to get prosecutors so you make sure you get a conviction?
Well, I mean, us as investigators are always going to go after more than what you need, because you never know what kind of circumstances are going to reveal that whatever you get wasn't got legally, or you get it in court. The sad and the hard thing is going to be is interviewing the kids that are around it. That's the thing that has to happen, and that's the thing we don't want to have happen. So somebody has to sit down with the kids and say, hey, what's going on here? And then plus, you get the interview with the adults. They're going to come off of stories eventually. Somebody, the 99%, sure, that's the dad. We all know how the dad becomes the dad, and it's terrible to think of. And so the dad is God. It's when the other people come off of their story and say, yeah, they're all involved, and they all have to suffer and should be held responsible.
Another part of this case as well is for the other children who are in the home, and the three adults who are facing charges right now, they all have child neglect charges that they're facing because of the conditions apparently that were going on inside this house. When you respond to a case, and because there's people, and I get it, in different parts of the country, like it's not everybody has, a lot of the things that some other people do have, like in terms of running water and all of that. But like, what is the bar where something actually becomes a case of neglect as opposed to just being born into an unfortunate situation?
Well, I don't know if any law enforcement ever made it to that house, but you can see from the news footage that you would question whether a child should be involved in that setting. And I know that us personally, as law enforcement, are obligated to go to the house and peek in the windows and do what you got to do to make sure those kids are okay. If you get a call that's saying there's young children, 11 and younger, living in that type of condition, and you don't see lights on, you don't see running water, we are kind of obligated morally and ethically to go in there. Whether they made contact at the house, I do not know, but looking at that and understanding what we know now, somebody has to be thinking, boy, I should have done something.
Definitely, and I know that they had a couple, I guess, run-ins with the law over the years, or at least the stepdad did. Nothing to the point of what he's now accused of, but you have to wonder about the red flags in any of these cases. When it comes to interviewing children, what are the skills? Because we know that there are people who are specially trained to be able to do that and to get information, but what do those skills actually look like compared to the conversations that you would have with the adults in a case like this?
Well, obviously you have to be a little bit more soft. You have to be softer with the kids, obviously. But that comes from us being adults having kids ourselves, and it would be the same type of response of parenting. How would you want your kid to be talked to? We can't come in there and start slamming things around and say, you're lying to me about this, you're lying about that. You've got to break down the kids' defense mechanism, basically, because they're living in heck. And, they're looking for somebody to latch onto. Maybe that's the case. I would think these kids here are looking for a savior. And so us as law enforcement, whether you bring a female or a grandfatherly type person in to chat with them. I've done interviews with that type of age, 10 and under, that witnessed murders in the back of a police car. And I tell you, it tears you up as an individual. But the techniques are what you would do, what your mom would do. And that's the one thing that we have to fall back on, is what would we want our kids to be, up against or talked to about. We don't have to really get into all the specifics. There are professionals that do that, and I'm sure that Oklahoma has those people that can do that. But initially, we just need to be nice to them, give them a lifeline, let them know there is better things out there. They're obviously going to be damaged for a long time. We just don't want to create that. We want to be the one they remember as being friendly.
Yeah, that's well put, because it's so hard to think about the trauma that all the children involved in this story are going to deal with, but then especially this 11-year-old child who gave birth, according to law enforcement. What type of resources are out there for a child in that situation? Because I imagine at 11 years old, you're not going to be able to take care of a newborn.
No, I'm sure that child is going to be up for, I don't know the ins and outs of our DHS. I know that we have a DHS. I know they work very hard. I know there's a lot of nonprofit organizations just probably calling in on this situation to get that child, those children, the help they need. Like I said, unfortunately, there's so many that run into the system, but I can't help to think that this is an all hands on deck type of case. Throughout the state of Oklahoma, there's going to be resources for these kids and the newborn. I bet you right now there's calls in to saying, we'll take that baby.
Without a doubt. And I think too, just kind of going back to the beginning, where it's one of these cases that come out and you just worry about where else it's happening behind closed doors. And this child, this 11-year-old, hadn't seen a doctor in more than a year. And that's really horrific in and of itself, knowing that to go through a pregnancy. But then at the same time, she also wasn't enrolled in school. So she was really kept behind closed doors, off the radar for a lot of people. In your experience and cases you've covered, what are some of the effective ways that these cases can be brought to light so it's not something that's just kept behind closed doors? I know that can be a really complicated question that everybody is trying to figure out when you see a story like this.
Yeah, I think it comes down to ethically, what can we do as law enforcement driving by and seeing a house that's dilapidated? It's like you said at the beginning of the interview. I mean, there are people that are unfortunate. That doesn't mean that they're ignorant. It just means that they have less than we do, or less than you think they should. But that's not the case here. With no running water, as explained by the neighbor, for 2 years. Boy, that is in itself enough to us to knock on the door. And if we don't get an answer, legally, we're kind of at odds here, but we're in the door. I mean, we have to as people. Cops be damned at that point. We're humans, and you go in and you got to save the kids. I mean, we got to save the children.
And I know a lot of this story, so much of it is just what we're hearing from law enforcement at this point, and then the Walkers, will have their opportunity in court and an opportunity at defense. But I also just think for these detectives, I mean, especially if you're a parent and you come to the hospital and you realize the case you're dealing with, but then you have this job to do where you have to interrogate these people, try to get them to at least trust you, to give you some piece of information you could use in an investigation. And I know there's a lot of compartmentalizing that goes into being a member of law enforcement, but really what does it take to mentally kind of be able to stomach the anger that you might have for the person across the way and what they're accused of doing in a case like this one?
Well, I can only speak personally.
Sure.
Personally, I'm better than they are, a better human being. So I can't let what they did affect what I've got to do. I have a job laid out for me, and really that's during that particular moment. Us in law enforcement that are interviewing, working the case, getting through it, we're professionals, and we're going to do what we got to do to make sure that those people are held responsible. So we can't come across the table and slap them like, people want us to do. We can't violate their rights at all. Everything has to be done above board and transparent. After when we are alone, we can cry by ourselves. I use that phrase a lot. I cry alone. The only way we can live through that, there's cops out there now that would say, oh, that's a bunch of crap. That's the way I get through it.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody has their own way to do it, but what a tough job. Just a really sad story here. And we'll see if there's any more arrests. At this point, 3 members of the same family, which is just shocking in and of itself. Dave Walker, retired homicide detective from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thank you for joining us on Law and Crime. We really appreciate it.
Sure, Chris, appreciate it. Thank you.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.